What was your worst sleepover experience during your childhood? I went over to a friend's house. She lives with her grandparents. Suddenly she refused to let me out of the room. She wouldn't let me go downstairs. She kept making excuses and wouldn't let me exit at all. I got creeped out and almost called my mom, but she begged me not to go. Eventually we sorta slept. She had the TV on all night so I couldn't sleep well. Years later it was discovered her grandfather was molesting her. And it turned out that night she noticed he was eyeing us both, so that was the explanation for how the night went down. My friend's elder brother, 22M, had a gun out. Me, 8M, and my friend, 8M, were playing Nintendo. The 22meters thought it would be funny to scare us, so he pointed the gun at us. We screamed and said to stop. He laughed and said it wasn't loaded. Pointed it at my friend and pulled the trigger. Shot him in the face from point blank range and killed him. I have nightmares still about it. I'm now 40. Early 1990s. When I was a kid, I slept over at a buddy's house for the first time. The next morning we woke up and his mom made us cereal. The milk tasted hella sweet. Even for my child taste buds. Something about it all seemed off. Just as my buddy finished his bowl of cereal, his mom came over and turned the bowl on its side to pour the leftover milk from the cereal bowl into a milk carton. The mom then did the same with hers. I felt my face turn red with shame and embarrassment and my stomach turn. Horrified and confused, I asked, "What is that? What are y'all doing?" He turned to me and dead said, "That's our cereal milk." Turned out this sadistic duck and his entire family poured all of the leftover milk from each bowl of cereal back into a separate milk carton. Specifically for cereal. I drank this entire family's backwash. Ducking cereal milk. Used. Cereal. Milk. The one and only time I slept over at another's house and late into the night all the other girls started masturbating. Quotations, because they didn't act like they knew what they were doing. Seemed they were finding it out for the first time, with those squishy spiked ball toys. I just felt really uncomfortable and tried to go to sleep. Friend and I went to another friend's house to sleep the night. We were all mucking around like most 10-year-old boys do. To the point our friend's dad started yelling at his son. Was a little bit awkward and tense. And then my friend told his dad to shut up. So his dad decided his son needed some old school punishment and made his son pull his pants down. And made us watch as he whipped him a few times on the bare cheeks with his belt. Went to a girl's sleepover where there were 3 of us. The girl's dad put an audio recorder under the teddies on top of her cupboard when he came in to hand them out. Would have been about 8 years old. We were talking about crushes at school and such. Next day he played the recording out loud to wake us up. Laughing and listening closely to what we were talking about. In front of us. They moved away eventually. 14 years later the girl messages me and asks if I remember anything weird happening at that sleepover. I told her what I remembered and it turned out she was being sexually abused by him. So he was recording it to make sure she didn't say anything to you. A bit of a weird one. This was more sad than anything. I stayed over at my elementary best friend's almost every week. Their grandmother lived with them and everyone treated her like a burden. They told me she was crazy and mean, but she was always very kind to me, and because I was raised to be nice to my elders, I was kind in return. One day, when my friend had to go talk to her mom about something, the grandma asked me into her room. I had never been in there and it was decorated completely differently. I could tell she had moved an entire house worth of stuff into one bedroom. I can't remember the whole conversation, but basically she said I was kind and she really loved talking to me every week. And that her family didn't really let her talk. She gave me a little metal Noah's Ark bracelet but asked me to hide it from the family. I was scared to wear the bracelet because I didn't want my friend to get mad, and every time I looked at it, it made me so sad for Nana. Went to a friend's birthday party in 4th grade. About halfway through the night we decided to play hide and seek. Maybe 30-45 minutes later, all I know is it was a long ass time, I come out of my hiding place to find them playing on the Wii in the living room. They'd forgotten about me and thought everyone was found, so they moved on to the next thing without me. Friend's mother and her boyfriend were arguing in the kitchen after we went to bed. He started talking about how he would kill the kids if I have to. I was about 7 or 8, I guess. So it didn't really sink in that much at the time. But my friend wasn't really in a great mood for the rest of the time I was there. I was 12. My supposed best friend's 17-year-old brother played his music very loudly and then shook his junk in my face. My friend and her brother then tied me to a chair and made me watch a Final Destination movie that freaked me out. They then proceeded to laugh their asses off when I woke up in the middle of the night screaming from a nightmare. I'm not friends with her anymore. My friend Ryan had a slumber party for his birthday. I remember we watched my favorite Martian, we went to sleep and I woke up mid-vomit. I wasn't even feeling sick. I literally woke up throwing up at 5 in the morning. They took me home. I slept until noon. And I remember thinking I wasted a whole day because I had never slept in that late before. Slept over at a friend's house when I was 9. Her family was wealthy and I was envious of everything she had. The party was really fun, but at 11 PM we heard her dad come home very drunk. After a little while I went upstairs to get some water and saw him pushing my friend's mom against a wall and threatening to hit her. She seemed so scared. I went back downstairs and never spoke about it with my friend. But I definitely learned something about appearances that night. I was about 7. I went to a friend's place just as his dad got home after accidentally shooting and killing his friend. I was too scared to leave and it was a big place and I guess we kind of just kept out of the way. His screams of anguish kept me up all night. Was a dark night. Not me but my sister. She was a sleepwalker. She was about 7. Slept over at a friend's house. Sleepwalked. Woke up in an enclosed space. Panicked. Pushed her arms straight out in front of her against what she thought was a wall in front of her. She had ended up behind a 7-foot tall bureau that was placed diagonally in the corner of the dining room. She pushed it over. It was full of plates, glasses, fine china, etc. It was 4 AM. Had my first ever sleepover with my best friend in the 1st grade. Things at night were awesome. When I woke up the next morning everyone at his house was super distant. And they called my mom to get rid of my sap. His father had an aneurysm that night and passed away. After everything settled he and his mom moved away and I never saw them again. My parents sent me to spend the night with my friend. When I got home the next day my mom told me my dad moved out and they were getting a divorce. I didn't see my dad for 3 years. How was the sleepover though? Had a big group of girls round for a sleepover when we were like 9/10. Slept in a tent in my garden. One girl brings my slightly special cat into the tent for the night. Cat's loving it. He's purring, getting loads of attention from this girl, and he falls asleep on her. Wake up the next morning to find a shitty on one of the other girl's hair. Turns out the cat had got up in the night, walked over to the second girl, done a poo and then went back to the first girl and fell asleep on her again. I've already commented but duck it. When I was like 14. I was at a big group sleepover with my friends. The mother of the girl who was hosting it was really strict about health and she told us that we couldn't order any pizza until we'd eaten the massive fruit platter she'd prepared for us. No one was touching the platter other than taking a few pieces to snack on. It was getting late. The pizza place would be closing soon and her mum was not budging about her rule. Someone needed to step up. That someone was me. I started absolutely devouring the fruit platter, shoving pieces into my mouth and swallowing them without chewing. This was a platter for like 8 people. But I was a woman on a mission. We did end up getting pizza. But I got so sick I spent most of the night throwing up in the toilet. A true friend. You took one for the team so they could have a great time. I was invited to a birthday party in elementary. Everybody kept talking about the slumber party afterwards. I assumed I was also invited to the slumber party. So I brought my sleeping bag and pajamas. Turns out, Nobody actually wanted me there. I cried in the host's room alone for an hour or so. Then faked being sick and had my grandma come pick me up. My friend had a poster of the live action Cat in the Hat in her room, and the thing scared me so bad at night that I couldn't fall asleep and I just sat there on the floor the whole night. Girls sleepover when I was in elementary for a friend's birthday. Had a great time laughing and telling scary stories before bed. Woke up the next morning with a fever and terrible nausea. Went home and I was only getting worse. I had a huge spot on my leg in between my ankle and knee. Right in the middle. It was hot, puffy, and red. Went to the hospital and it turns out I was suffering from a really bad staph infection. The night before, we were playing on the stairs when I slipped and SCR'd my leg. The doctor initially thought I was bitten by a spider. The infection was spreading fast and was eating away at my flesh. I had a tunnel up to my kneecap that had to be packed with fresh gauze every day. Almost lost my leg. It was my birthday party. I was around 10. I invited all my friends. About 4 of them. A couple hours into the sleepover, I found out the hard way that none of them liked me. And they had just came to my party to hang out with each other when they kept excluding me from everything, and they finally told me. I spent the whole night crying in my room. Friends decided to set up a mock game of Survivor. Based on the reality show. Which turned out to be an excuse to vote out the friend nobody likes first. Guess who was the friend nobody liked? I bled through my underwear and pajamas all over my friend's bed. I was mortified and too embarrassed to tell her. I cleaned up in the bathroom before anyone else was up. I then made the bed up before anyone could see it. I still feel so terrible and embarrassed about it almost 15 years later. It was like 6 or 7 of us at a friend's house. Hot summer night, so we're camping outside in sleeping bags. It's pretty late early and we've been ducking with each other all night, tossing little pebbles, running around, dragging each other around in sleeping bags, the usual. Well, I feel a nudge when drowsy and just wave it off. Then I feel a nudge inside of my sleeping bag and immediately hear a squeaky screech. I scream and everyone immediately pops up. I'm zipped up in a mummy style sleeping bag, so when I stand it's still wrapped and so is the screeching in my bag. A quick-witted kid named Cade runs over and shakes my ass out of the bag and a huge ducking bat flies out. I later harness this fear and become Batman. Edit. It did not bite me. Cade's mom did a very awkward full body search at her. She was coincidentally an RN, which is why that kid had quick wit. I invited my entire class of 24 kids to my birthday party when I turned 13. When I was 8, I had a sleepover at a friend's house who lived in the bush. They were living in a dilapidated house on the property while their proper house was being built. Unfortunately, this house didn't have an inside toilet. Rather, a long drop out the back. Double unfortunately, that night was a thunderstorm. It was a rule that I had to go to the toilet before bed, but one look outside at the rain, thunder and their horse standing between the door and the long drops, I skipped that step. I ended up wetting the bed that night and her dad wasn't too pleased with me. I remember her brother coming home in the morning say, "You're the one who wet the bed." My friend also told all our other friends at school. Not horrific, but it certainly affected me. In a couple from soccer practice with a teammate classmate with whom I shared a lot of mutual friends. Her mom casually mentioned her upcoming birthday party. The girl angrily shouted at her mom, and in front of other girls in the car, "Thanks for bringing it up, Mom. Now I have to invite me. I'm young." So when I got the invite, my mom makes me go. I don't remember too much about the party, except for when someone decided all us girls were going to relocate our sleeping bags from the basement to the upstairs living room to watch a movie. The birthday girl went down to grab everyone's sleeping bags. When she brought them all up and everyone was snuggled in, mine wasn't there. I went downstairs into the basement, and she had purposely left only mine down there. Friend babysitter from church invited my older sister and I over to stay the night with another friend of my sister's who he also babysat. Was woken up in the middle of the night to the cops taking my sister and myself to a foster home. My mom had a lot of problems and the babysitter had seen her abuse my sister and I. He got us out of the home. I was very young at the time and didn't understand the situation. Don't even remember the babysitter's name. Wish I could thank him. I'm pretty pale. I sat up during a sleepover with a bunch of girls and made one of them scream because she saw me in a mirror and thought I was a ghost. We snuck out of the house and went to sneak into the girls' sleepover and their mom was waiting on the back porch in the dark. She took a long drag off her cigarette and said hello boys, which of course led us to haul ass. I miss those days. When I slept at a friend's, I went for a shitty and blocked the toilet. His poor dad had to put on some rubber gloves and break up my monster turd. That'll teach him to keep a poop knife handy. I was staying with a friend at his grandma's house. He wanted to sneak out to meet this girl that he liked. So I went with him. On the way back, this car screeches up. A man gets out and starts beating the shitty out of my friend. I didn't know it at the time, but it was his dad. That was a super awkward ride back to his grandma's. Someone tried to glue my eyes shut. When my dad died the night I was having a sleepover and I didn't find out until I got home the next day. Well, one sleepover one of my friends figured out jacking off and had zero shame. Definitely jacked off in front of like 5 of us. In high school I went to stay over with my buddy at one of his friend's houses and it turned out that it wasn't really his friend, it was some dude from Xbox Live that lived in the same town but was for sure older. Had to have been in his 20s when we were 16. Smoked some kind of seed mix that he claimed had some kind of hallucinogenic property. I believe he called it Yopo. Anyways. Had anxiety as a kid. Couldn't shake the thought of something happening while I was gone. House fire. Parents suddenly move. Horrific car accident. etc. So many a time I'd wake my friend's parents up at 1 AM ish to take me home. I must say though, 20 plus years later, my friends stuck with me. Never made fun, at least not in front of me at the time, but we laugh about it now. I ate an entire box of fruit roll-ups and puked rainbows for an hour. My friend's mum was into all of those weird ghost hunting and Bigfoot shows. So over dinner she made watch one where people went around communicating with ghosts. I was maybe 11 and had never seen anything like that before, so I totally believed her mum telling me it was real. I also believed her when she said the silver tea set on the dresser outside. Friend's name. S room is haunted by my grandmother. I've seen her ghost cleaning it at night. Their house had a really creepy old style feel to it too. So I was terrified to sleep. After I finally fell asleep though, I was awoken suddenly by the sound of silverware rattling outside the door. I'll never forget the feeling of being frozen in fear like that. Drenched in cold sweat thinking that great grandma's ghost was about to waltz through the door. I've never been so relieved to go home in the morning. Years later I was over at their house again and caught sight of her cats playing around on the dresser and bumping the tea set. Her mum was just nuts and enjoyed scaring me, I guess. I slept over my friend's house when I was like 7 and her dog had to go to the bathroom in the middle of the night and was whining at the door. Her mom woke up and went out and hit the dog with a pan. It was terrible and I never slept over her house again because of that. I slept over at my best friend's house when I was maybe 7. While I was there, my friend and I both happened to have one of our baby teeth come out. We put our teeth out for the tooth fairy to collect. And in the middle of the night I saw my friend's mum sneaking in to swap them for money. So that's how I found out the tooth fairy wasn't real and I was devastated. The whole time. It was your friend's mum coming to your house to take your teeth. Went to a sleepover for a cousin's birthday. There were 4 of our other cousins there. The oldest told a secret to all of the attendees about me. No one would tell me the secret. Someone finally caved. After at 6 hours of torture and TTY treatment of me. Damn behavior was an accident. Thanks auntie arsehole for talking about the procreation habits of my parents to your 9-year-old. I woke up in the middle of the night with an extremely painful ear infection. Got them a lot as a kid. But was too awkward and nervous to wake up my friend's parents. So I just spent the entire night lying there in pain trying not to make noise or cry. They were nice enough to take me to the doctors once they woke up. Bunch of 8-year-old boys decided it would be smart to throw objects at each other in the dark. I picked up a shoe and threw it at someone only to immediately hear crying. Lights go on and this kid's nose is now a blood waterfall. His mother was furious and wanted to have everyone sent home, but the kid fought it, so we stayed. My earliest sleepover, I was so young that I was still afraid of the dark. And my buddy wasn't. And had a werewolf mask. He thought it'd be funny to scare me. I accidentally punched him in the face in my terrified flailing. We didn't hang out too much after I went home the next day. Having a Mortal Kombat 2 tournament with my friends on Sega Genesis. I was on a winning streak, but suddenly I felt a rumbling in my stomach. Now Mortal Kombat 2 did not have any sort of pause feature. I knew I could hold it for just a few moments longer. Just had to KO my friend and I'd win. Right down to the wire. When he had about 1 hit of health left. It happened. I shit my pants. Fatality. Edit. First time ever getting awards, and it's from a story about shitting myself. Thanks. I guess.